Hey, so I've been reading this guy, Teilhard, Teilhard de Chardin. That's not how you pronounce his name. Uh, I'm not good with French. His first name is Pierre. Let's go with Pierre Chardin. Chardin. Um, so who was this guy? If you're not familiar with him, he was a Jesuit priest at the turn of the century into the 20th century, and what made him special was he had I guess you could call it a modern view of science and spirituality, a modern view of Christianity. And basically what he did was he was a paleontologist, I think, or archaeologist, something like that. He studied um, fossils and tried to trace our evolution and helped those sort of studies. He's been famous for the Peking Man. Um, Ended up not being an ancestor, but still, he was sort of one of the just major thinkers and philosophers of his time. However, got through. He had a couple rough times with uh, the higher ups in the church because they didn't like how he tried to combine modern science and evolution and reconcile that with a more ancient spirituality. He did that. It wasn't very. It wasn't very. I was about to say kosher. It wasn't appropriate, and it was a break from tradition. It was a reinterpretation of scriptures and of Christianity in general to a much more mystical, transcendent, and scientific convergence in a way. And that sort of thinking really, I guess, ticked off the church, and they basically told him, stop teaching and go do some science. And that's exactly what he did. He didn't, however, stop writing, and most of his works were published, I think, after his death. Um, I'm not sure. But at any rate, he wrote a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff. And a lot of it is somewhat heavy. I usually find that older works from the turn of the century are written differently to begin with. Much more wordy and less down to earth. It's more like a very academic thesis, and I guess it's just the way they did it back then. I mean, words are more important. They didn't just kind of come out like this. How easy it is, or how blogs are, or even modern books and novels are. They're very sophisticated and articulate. Not necessarily a bad thing. It can really help your own writing style. As a tangent, it can really help your own writing and reading abilities by reading these old books that are just full of interesting thoughts. But anyway, what did Teilhard say? I've told you about his life, but I haven't told you about his thoughts. Um, his basic belief was that evolution and the universe as a whole, and let me basically try to paraphrase and summarize this into like one or two sentences. All of existence is part of an evolutionary process that will eventually converge at a single point. All of existence converging and evolving to a single point, not necessarily a physical point, but a single point, an omega point, which he correlated with or equated with God. And he believed this omega point is the ultimate destiny of reality. Reality has evolved from the geosphere to the biosphere to the noosphere, and the noosphere is a conceptual sphere of thoughts, interactions, consciousness, awareness. This gradual direction of evolution and direction of the universe being compelled to higher and higher forms of being would eventually lead us to God. So basically, he thought existence is slowly being pulled back towards God and evolving up, and to describe in Wilbur's way, up through Eden, and to return to the source in a way. And this sounds very mystical. And he basically not only looked at science as empirically as he could for the time, for what they knew at the time about evolution, etc., and posited theories. And one of his famous books is called The Phenomenon of Man. And what he basically poses is Now, I've read about a little over half of it at this point, and he actually refrains from a lot of spiritual language and sticks to the scientific language and philosophical. What he basically poses in this book, and this is pretty much um, the core teaching. He analyzes different species and tries to see if there's a direction in evolution. At his time, they didn't think there was necessarily any overall direction. It was just sort of a flowering and random blossoming, etc., etc. Now, today at least, we know that evolution has a direction in the sense that it becomes more complex over time. Um, Teilhard tried to, and again, I'm not a biologist, but what he basically did in the book was say, if we can find something that crosses multiple types of life, some kind of general direction, then it can't just apply to one thing, or we just be an offshoot. If there is a direction in evolution, then it has to be shared by all beings. Is there some kind of common thread that spins all of evolution together? And to him, it would be the gradual striving towards not necessarily complexity, well, that's how we'd see it today, but he called it cerebralization. The modern term for that is called encephalization. Encephalization really just means growing more brain matter, and that's only for brained animals, but he kind of said it this way. The nervous system and the brain, these two things have been developing across the board. Doesn't matter if you're looking at a frog, a fish, a crustacean, arthropod, an insect, a primate, a mammal, a reptile. They all have been successful when they developed some kind of greater sensitivity to the world. This gradual increase of sensitivity and awareness of the world is a thing that links all of evolution together and suddenly gives it a direction, and this is his basic teaching. He called it cerebralization. The modern term would be encephalization for the brain, and in more specifically, the growth of awareness and sensitivity. And he tried to ground it, of course, in empirical science, and that would be, in this case, the growth of the nervous system throughout all of biological evolution, and the growth of the brain, and then subsequently consciousness. So this thing has been growing layers and spheres in the ecosystem, and eventually it reached a critical point where the emergence of thought and ideas came about, and this is very much a part of evolution. He tried to connect us to the rest of biological evolution. Man wasn't this strange, detached, rational being that existed as a fluke. He tried to show that there was this direction and that we are part of a great process. And theologically, he believed the emergence of a person only demonstrated more that there must be a God. Because if the universe has a compulsion to become more and more personified, more and more consciousness, then he believed that, okay, that's the direction that we're going in. The ultimate point will be this ultimate personification, this ultimate God, which all things are created and destroyed. So that is his omega point, and that's basically his theory. And this guy, let me remind you, lived in the late 1800s, early 1900s. So, yeah, I mean, his ideas were pretty ahead of his time. And to give you a demonstration of that, he basically predicted that civilizations, if they're going to continue into this emergence of consciousness and complexity, more brain, more mind, he believed that Earth was growing a brain, it was growing a mind, and that societies would have to stop being fragmented and actually link together, just like a brain would have to. And he basically posited that in the future, to let you know, this is in the 1920s and 30s. In the future, there will be this strange, and not strange, but there will be some kind of way that people link together and network and create a hive mind, a collective. And I'm speaking to you on it right now. So that's just a little bit of food for thought. That was Teilhard, Pierre, and definitely check him out. He's a very interesting guy. Thanks for listening.